Hello Patreon and YouTube, this is Nathan P. Butler, and this is our project update for the month of July 2018, being recorded on July 26th. Of course, being recorded at the one time when I'm actually going to be able to record anytime in the next few days, and the moment I start recording is the moment that the neighbors outside decide to start mowing their lawn. So hopefully that will not screw up your hearing very much, but you may get a little bit of background noise. I think this filters out fairly well, the blue snowball mic here. Not really a whole lot to update on this time around because this month has been primarily focused almost entirely when it comes to my fandom efforts and project efforts on getting the Star Wars Timeline Gold done so that the final edition can get out within about the first week to week and a half or so of August. So pretty much any time I would normally say, hey, I think I'll sit down and do an episode of From the Star Wars Home Video Library. Nope, sorry. You're instead going to work on the timeline. You know, I think I'll be able to get a little bit done on pictures for the book. Nope, sorry. Sit your ass down and work on the timeline. So that is taking up most of my time. More on that in a moment. First, I want to say thank you to the different Patreons at the various tiers who are supporting the project here. Of course, our highest tier is the Nobility of the Butlerniverse, so thank you very much to the Nobility, who include Brian Snook, Aaron Melzak, Andrew Bettis, Benjamin Handelman, Gary Sherwood, and David Ray. Remember, if you're in that top tier, you can submit questions and comments and such for those exclusive Q&A videos. We have one question right now, I believe, from David Ray, so that we'll have a question to use in the early August exclusive Q&A. But if you have questions you want to add and you're in that Nobility tier, make sure you drop by the Patreon page, go to the collection thread, and put your question in there. Of course, we then have our denizens of the Butlerniverse, who include Jason Hunt, Bobby Craig, Robert Medina, Chris Morgan, Sam Howard, Stephen M., Joey Zitzman, Jeff Ellis, and Jared Rasher. And then finally, we have our travelers through the Butlerniverse tier, which include Ben P. Stein, P. Good middle initial. Thomas Myers, Martin Dahl, Austin Pierce, Jeremiah Mustard, and S.W. Chris. So thank you all very much. You'll also see your names, of course, within the thanks in the credits here, and eventually in the second edition of A Saga on Home Video. As far as projects go, just running them down very quickly because there's not a whole lot to talk about this time. The book progress, second edition of A Saga on Home Video. Haven't really been able to do anything new in the last month or so. Still in the process of taking color pictures and adding them, but nothing really new this month because of the focus on the timeline itself. As far as Patreon goes, of course, that is patreon.com/NathanPButler. We have our 2 exclusive audio commentaries that got released in July, on July 1st. We had an audio commentary for the Clone Wars episode Trespass, and then on the 15th, the Clone Wars episode Blue Shadow Virus, where we learn, among other things, that, what's his name? Nuvo Vendi, right? The bad guy is a fan of Imagine Dragons, which you'd have to listen to the commentary to get. Then on July 5th, we also had our exclusive Nobility of the Butlerniverse Q&A video that focused on a question that came in from David Ray that sort of dealt with some of the recent goings-on in the Star Wars podcasting community. No new episodes this month yet for Cloud City Casino over at StarWarsReport.com, but alongside Cloud City Casino at StarWarsReport.com, you of course have me and Mark Hurlman doing our Star Wars Beyond the Films podcast, and we did have a new episode of that. We had episode number 236, which finally gets away from the fandom toxicity stuff from talking about that in the last couple of episodes, and instead gives us our take on the film Solo, A Star Wars Story, finally. On YouTube, we had a little bit of new content this time, mostly focusing on various products and reviews rather than part of my series like From the Star Wars Home Video Library. So we had some Nate's Favorite Deck Building Game stuff and some other stuff that were essentially product reviews. So aside from the exclusive Q&A video, since our last project update, we had a review of the Star Wars Imperial Assault Uskru, or however you're supposed to say it, District Skirmish map for Imperial Assault for Fantasy Flight Games. And for also Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars stuff, we had a review of Force and Destiny Knights, with a K, that is, of Fate, which is an RPG source book. Then in Nate's Favorite Deck Building Games, we had a look at the new Star Realms materials that came from the Star Realms Frontiers Kickstarter. We also have a quick video right as that came in to show the different products that I wound up picking up through the Kickstarter. We also had an episode on the newest expansion for Ascension in Nate's Favorite Deck Building Games, so we took a look there at Delirium. And then also on a card game, but not a deck building game, we took a look at the 2 new expansions, numbers 4 and 5, for the Dresden Files cooperative card game, as part of an ongoing series looking at products from that game as they come out. So a little bit of Star Wars, a little bit of other stuff, primarily focusing on game materials rather than home video. No new episodes are from the Star Wars home video library this month, although, woohoo! Thank you to Chris Clark. You may know him as Chris Jin on the Facebook page for that Star Wars home video group. Thanks to him being eagle-eyed and spotting an eBay auction from Texas a few days ago, I was finally, and it's still in the mail, but I was finally able to get what is sort of my holy grail of Star Wars collecting, the one thing that's been a glaring hole in my collection that I've been dying to get and trying to get for years, which is the 2nd volume of the UK Droids VHS collection. So that is on its way to me. Thankfully, I will be able to cover that in the book for the 2nd edition, showing all of them like I did with Ewoks rather than just showing like an example one. Oh, beautiful stuff, wonderful stuff. Thank you very much to Chris. When that comes in, I'll be able to show you that. But I also have some other stuff sitting back here on the shelves, like different versions of the UK sort of standalone version of Star Wars Trivial Pursuit. Some VHS releases of the prequels from Japan. A North American but subtitled Spanish release of the original trilogy. A screener for Ewoks The Battle of Endor. I've got all kinds of stuff just like sitting back here on the shelves that I need to get to, but the timeline is sucking most of the air out of the room. Along with the fact that it's just easier to record the card stuff in there so I can then put the cards away, rather than getting the setup going in here, which is something I can usually only do about once a week or once every couple of weeks. So we do have new stuff coming from the Star Wars Home Video Library, but we're not quite there yet. The other 2 big things are going to be a book, not a saga on home video, and the Star Wars Timeline Gold. So we'll start with the book. You may recall that in fairly recent memory, I wrote essays for each of the 3 Sequart, Sequential Art Organization Star Wars essay collections. One about Season 1 of Rebels and kicking that off. One was about the Marvel Comics up through basically the adaptation of The Empire Strikes Back. And then in the last volume, it was an afterword that was opposite of Forward by Timothy Zahn that sort of wrapped up that series. Well, I got invited in by Lou Tambone to write again for another of these essay collections from Sequart about a sci-fi franchise, only this one wasn't Star Wars. It's a new book called The Cyberpunk Nexus, Exploring the Blade Runner Universe. And I've got myself an article in here, an essay, which you will find late in the book, page 336, entitled Building the World of Blade Runner Without Breaking It. Why unasked questions are answered, but our most enduring question is not. And it's sort of a look at Blade Runner 2049 in relation to the 3 little short films they used to promote it and lead into it, like Blackout, and then also gets into sort of a sense of why getting answers to questions we don't ask, like what we got in those prequel, or bridge short videos, why those kinds of things help enhance the experience, but why answering the most lingering question of all of Blade Runner, which is Deckard a replicant? Giving us an answer to that would actually have undermined the franchise and its longevity to a degree rather than being beneficial. So sort of an argument for that and a discussion about that concept. Was an answer needed? What types of answers, if any, did we get, and that sort of thing. Primarily relating back to Blade Runner 2049 more so than the original that was set a couple decades earlier. But again, it is the Cyberpunk Nexus, Exploring the Blade Runner Universe, edited by Lou Tambone and Joe Bongiorno. Joe is also a Star Wars Timeliner guy. As for Lou, you might know him as T-Bone. I've known Lou for quite a while. He actually helped inspire me to make StarWarsFanWorks.com in the first place. After my Star Wars Timeline, which I guess was the Star Wars Timeline Gold by then, I believe, started being hosted over at his Star Wars with a Z, StarWarZ.com, way back in the day. But he brought me in to write about 2049, and it's a fun experience. I haven't really got a chance to write much professionally about sci-fi franchises that aren't Star Wars, so pretty cool to get a chance to write for Blade Runner, and this is out there now. It's in this form, it's in Kindle form. I believe Amazon is where you can get it primarily right now. Not sure about elsewhere. And of course, the biggest thing I've been working on, the thing that will be out by the time you see another of these project update videos, is the Star Wars Timeline Gold's final edition. I went into why it's ending in a fairly recent video. So just go and reference that here on the channel in order to see why it's wrapping up if you're not quite sure why that is the case. The final edition was either going to be in late August or late July or early August. The way it's looking right now is I'm going to try to put as much time in as I can over about the next week to week and a half, and hopefully have it out before August 15th. I'm trying to aim for basically what is the first week of school for us, which is the week that begins on Monday, August 6th, but I have no idea if that's actually going to wind up happening. It just kind of depends on how much I need to get through. At this point, I have wrapped up work on any of the books I needed to summarize that I was definitely going to get onto this edition. So if you're curious, the last adult novel that was summarized for the Timeline Gold is Thrawn Alliances. They wound up sending me an early review copy, so I had it long enough to actually be able to read it and get it summarized and stuff before I had to sort of call it quits on adult novels. The newest young reader novel that'll be on there is The Mighty Chewbacca in the Forest of Fear. And then the most recent other category book that'll be on there should be The Rebel Files, which had a lot of new information to add. As far as books go, that's pretty much it. The books are pretty much done, as are video games and whatnot, although I do probably plan on putting what is it called? Are You Scared, Darth Vader, or whatever it's called? Probably I'll put that into the Apocrypha section before I fully wrap that stuff up. So primarily right now, all the cartoons are done, the games are done, the books and stuff. Right now it's just a huge stack of comics that I need to get summarized and on there before I feel like I can then go through and finalize the documents and put out the final edition. So probably, again, about maybe 2 weeks, give or take. Definitely by the midpoint of August, you'll see that final edition out there. As far as what is in it, lots and lots of stuff. Let's see, titles for different adaptation comics are now on there. Summaries, of course, for The Last Jedi and for Solo and for all of the new season of Rebels and all the new stuff of Forces of, Forces, I almost said Force and Destiny, Forces of Destiny. Mace Windu, Jedi of the Republic, all the Poe Dameron stuff up to this point, the Dr. Aphra stuff, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Lots and lots and lots of stuff. Although I would note that while the appendices is getting updated and the story group canon document is being updated, you should not expect any updated material in the Legends Volume 1 or Volume 2 documents or the Legends Clone Wars supplement. Why? Because really the only new Legend stuff being produced is the Old Republic stuff, and there is so much of that that I will never get to for the timeline that by itself would probably have added another year worth of work just to get caught up, let alone to touch any of the new stuff for the Old Republic. That is simply going to be something that the timeline never gets a chance to touch. Thankfully, there are other resources out there to give you information about the storylines behind those further expansions of the Old Republic. So, getting there. I think it's like 100, nearly 200 pages of new material as usual from the previous edition, but still adding and adding and adding. Still about another couple of weeks, and then I will wrap it up and put out that final edition, and that will be it. And that will finally free my time back up to get to work on things like From the Star Wars Home Video Library, more pictures for the new edition of the book, and whatnot. Basically, the last month or so, aside from work and getting stuff ready for the baby, has been extreme crunch time on the Star Wars Timeline Gold. If I'm sitting there working on just about anything as a project, that's pretty much what it is, and I've had to sort of discipline myself that when I'm interested in doing something else, I have to sort of say to myself, no, you can't do that something else. But you do have the time, otherwise you wouldn't have wanted to work on something else. So use that time to work on the timeline, damn it. Yeah, it's really kind of a self-discipline, kicking my own ass kind of thing to actually get it done. But this is the last time I'll need to be working on it to get a new release finalized, so not nearly as bad as it could be if I was looking ahead to yet another year, and then another year, and then another year of the same type of workload beating the crap out of me at the end of summer break and beginning of the school year. So, got that going for us. So you will see the new final edition of the Star Wars Timeline Gold coming up here within the next couple of weeks, and you'll see more content flowing a little more regularly once that is done, so I can get to those other things. But by and large, that's basically been what the month has been. It's been the Star Wars Timeline Gold month and a tiny bit of other stuff sprinkled in there. So, that all said, not really much more to get into here, so I will call it, cut it, whatever you want to call it. I will slice us off here, and I'll catch you next month for the next of these project updates, by which time you'll have more stuff from the podcast, more stuff from Patreon, more stuff on YouTube, and a final edition of the Star Wars Timeline Gold. So, good stuff coming within the next month. Keep an eye out. Thanks for your interest. Have a good one.